up as a kid. All a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from.
Is Joe Burrow going to be able to turn around this Cincinnati Bengals organization? And this is a video that I should have made a couple of months ago after the draft, but I'm just now getting into it now. You know what they say, it's better late than never. But I do think that Joe Burrow is going to be able to turn around the Cincinnati Bengals organization. And I think a lot of people are just, just overrating this whole entire thing. Like, a lot of people keep saying that Joe Burrow's career is going to die in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to waste all his talent and things like that. I don't think that's going to happen. People act like the Cincinnati Bengals are worse than the Cleveland Browns or the New York Jets. Think about what the Cincinnati Bengals organization has did this past decade, from 2010 to 2020. Where will you rank the Cincinnati Bengals organization based on what they did this past decade? We're not talking about all time. We're just talking about strictly based on from 2010 to 2020 right now. Where will you rank them? I would rank them in the middle of the pack. Because like most teams, they have had success when they've been able to make it to the playoffs, but they just weren't able to win those big playoff games. But the Cincinnati Bengals had a pretty solid stretch when they were consistently in the playoffs. So, I mean, a lot of people keep making them out to be like worse than the Jets, worse than the Browns. I know they're not. Now, are the Bengals a great organization? No. But I don't think they're as bad as people are making them out to be. They just had a couple of bad seasons. So, I mean, I think that Joe Burrow, as number one pick, you got to have a couple of characteristics. Not only do you have to be a phenomenal talent, but you also got to be able to overcome having a dysfunctional organization, having a dysfunctional front office, having a not so great coaching staff. As unfair as it may seem, those are the expectations that comes with being a quarterback that's taken in the top 5 or the top 10. You have to be able to overcome certain, things that other guys like Lamar Jackson that get drafted in the later rounds of the first round or in the rounds 2 and 3 don't have to overcome, because those quarterbacks get drafted to great organizations. But when you are a high draft pick and you get drafted as a quarterback to a bad team that hasn't been great for years, you have to be able to overcome that. As unfair as it is, that's just what comes with being the top 5 or top 10 draft pick as a quarterback. Look at Sam Darnold. As unfair as the situation he's in with the New York Jets, he has to be able to overcome that. Same thing with Baker Mayfield. That's just the expectations that comes with being a number 1 overall pick. And I mean, look, Joe Burrow's career, I don't think is going to get wasted in Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati has a very good group of young talent. I really like the talent that they have on the roster, especially on offense at the skill position. All they need to improve is the offensive line, and the defense should come around as well. So, I mean, I think that Cincinnati, with Joe Burrow at the helm at quarterback, is going to be a respectable franchise in the next couple of years. Now, are they going to be able to win the Super Bowl? That remains to be decided. Because Joe Burrow, regardless of how great he may become, he won't be able to carry the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl by himself. He's going to have to have a good coach to win the Super Bowl. You see, it's a reason why you don't have to have a good quarterback to win the Super Bowl, but you got to have an elite coach to win the Super Bowl. You see, it doesn't matter how great of a player you are. You got to have a good coaching staff, and you got to have a good coach if you want to win the Super Bowl. Look at Matthew Stafford. Look at Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has been carrying the Houston Texans on his back ever since he got drafted there as a rookie. Look at Matthew Stafford. He's basically been carrying the Detroit Lions on his back ever since he was number 1 overall pick there, like near a decade ago. So, I mean, neither one of those quarterbacks have been able to win in the playoffs, because once you get in the playoffs, it comes down to coaching. And the Bengals, the question remains to be seen, is Zach Taylor going to be the guy who can end up becoming a great coach and getting the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl? That is the question. So, can Joe Burrow turn around the Cincinnati Bengals franchise? Yes, he can. I don't think the Bengals are necessarily going to, ruin his career like a lot of people say that they are. Because when you think about it, the Bengals, what they did this past decade, they were pretty solid. I mean, they had, the last couple of seasons they have been pretty down. But I mean, for the most part of this past decade, they were pretty solid to a point that they were always in the playoffs. They just couldn't win in the playoffs. And I mean, Marvin Lewis was a solid coach, but he just wasn't a great enough coach to be able to win in the playoffs. And I mean, even then, when you look back at 2015, Marvin Lewis should have had his first playoff win there. But it didn't happen because of the dumb penalty and the late hit by Vontaze Burfict. If that never happened, the Bengals would have won that game against the Steelers in the wild card, and they would have won the playoff game. So, I mean, the Bengals aren't necessarily just this god-awful organization that players just go to die. It's more worse organizations than the Cincinnati Bengals, like the Raiders, the Dolphins, even though they're now having to turn around, the Jets, the Browns, the Jaguars. So, I mean, it's organizations that are way worse than the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think that Joe Burrow can turn around this Bengals team, and I think that he can get them to the playoffs. And a lot of you guys got to look at it like this. What is going to be the future of the AFC North when Joe Burrow hits his prime? When he finally develops into a top 10 or top 5 quarterback, what is the AFC North going to look like? The Steelers, they have a couple of guys that are in contract years. Cam Hayward's in the contract year. You got Bud Dupree that's in the contract year. You got Ben Roethlisberger that's Asian. James Conner, Juice Smith-Schuster, they all have contract years. You have a Steelers roster that's getting up there in age. How long are they going to be good for? What about the Baltimore Ravens? The Baltimore Ravens are good right now, and they're able to bring in a lot of key players that they need to bring in because of Lamar Jackson playing on a rookie deal. But Lamar Jackson only has like a year or two left on his contract until he asks for a new deal. And trust me, Lamar Jackson is going to cash out. And when he cash out, that's basically going to cripple the Baltimore Ravens cap-wise to the fact that they're not going to be able to bring in star players consistently year in and year out. Then the Cleveland Browns. I think the Cleveland Browns, with the new head coach and the new front office that they have with Kevin Stefanski, I think they're going to be the equivalent to the Minnesota Vikings. Like, they're going to have some good seasons that they make the playoffs, and they're going to have some really good years, but they're also going to have some bad years as well. So I think they're going to be really inconsistent. I think they're going to have some success, but they're not going to be able to sustain that success. So the AFC North could look very different in the next coming years or so. So, I mean, I think Joe Burrow is going to be able to get the Cincinnati Bengals to the playoffs and make them a playoff contender. But will they be a Super Bowl contender? That remains to be decided. It all depends on how good this front office is going to be and how good his coaching staff will be. But the narrative that people think that Joe Burrow is just going to die in Cincinnati, he's not going to be able to turn around the Cincinnati Bengals, I don't think that's going to happen because Cincinnati needed Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a good leader. He's going to be able to overcome the shortcomings in that front office. He's going to be able to overcome the dysfunctionality in Cincinnati. And I think that he's going to be a really great player in the NFL. So I think that Joe Burrow can turn around the Cincinnati Bengals. I just think that a lot of people just, wanted, are just looking for a good story or things like that. Like, they're just looking for something to talk about. I don't think the Bengals are just going to ruin Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow's career is going to die in Cincinnati. I mean, look at Houston. Deshaun Watson has been carrying the Texans on his back ever since he got there. So, I mean, even if the Bengals don't have that great of a coaching staff and maybe they don't have that great of an organization, Joe Burrow, I think, is going to be good enough that he can be able to carry the Cincinnati Bengals for a couple of years or so, maybe 2 or 3, 4 years to the playoffs. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think that Joe Burrow is just going to fail in Cincinnati like a lot of people think that he is.